Okay, stop
Absolute
there.
devastation. The scientists, climate scientists, are tearing their hair out in despair. They too are now scared and saying it's a time to panic. Yesterday, there was some orange cornstarch on Stonehenge. Today, there isn't. And you're angry about that. Please be angry with the fossil fuel execs who, in the interest of greed, are subjecting us all. People are dying now because of the greed.
Protesters were arrested on suspicion of damaging Stonehenge after they were filmed spraying orange powder onto the sacred Druid monument. We're joined now by the historian Alice Loxton. Morning, Alice.
Morning.
And Gill Tavner, a spokesperson for Just Stop Oil. Good morning, Gill.
Good morning.
We'll get on to the Stansted thing in a minute, but let's talk about Stonehenge. That's what we're here to talk about first of all. We've spoken to your group a few times, and we've heard the lines which we may talk about in other contexts: the urgency on climate change, the folly of polluters. But people will want to know, why Stonehenge? Why a place as beautiful and significant as Stonehenge? Are you going after big Druid? It makes no sense to some people.
It does make sense. Stonehenge, we absolutely respect all historical and cultural heritage and natural heritage as well. Stonehenge has been there for 5,000 years, and the sun will continue to rise and continue to set for another 5,000 years. But it'll rise and set on a devastated world the way we're going at the moment, and things are really serious now. We have, like, in the whole, you're looking at history on the scale of 5,000 years, and we've got about 5 years in which to make the difference we have to make. The damage done to Stonehenge was minimal. They've said there's no damage done. It was cornstarch. It's been blown away by blowers. But the damage that's being done to our environment is immeasurable, really. And that's really what we should be enraged about. Stonehenge has been a good place to get people talking about that and to get that idea of the short amount of time in relation to the whole.
But don't you see that there's a whole bunch of people who want to sympathise with what you're saying, but they regard that as an act of desecration, an act of vandalism? You're taking something that's beautiful and part of our heritage, as you say, and you are doing something that disfigures it. And that winds people up.
That response by this language, and wouldn't it be good if you got fossil fuel execs here and said, people are angry about the devastation you're doing to the planet, to the future, and that you need to stop right now because that's in the interest of greed. Putting some powder on Stonehenge was not in the interest of greed. It was in the interest of love for everything that we hold dear right now that's being devastated. It's really serious times. We've got 5 years. We need to end fossil fuels by 2030.
Alice,
a bit of cornstarch on Stonehenge allows me on here to say that.
Alice, you're a historian. What do you make of this? Is this a harmless way of raising an important issue, or could it have an impact on historical monuments?
Well, I can't believe that, Gill, you opened that with saying that you respect historic heritage. It's a joke that you can say that after what happened yesterday. Make no mistake, Stonehenge was damaged. There has been damage to the natural material on there, ironically. This is ecological vandalism, which will then expose the stones further to more damage. But there has a wider historic impact on historic sites and heritage in this country, because we're one step closer to having to have airport-style security in major museums, and that filters down to smaller museums too. And so make no mistake, this is a kick in the teeth to everybody who works in heritage, everybody who works so hard, volunteers to keep these sites open, and also huge swathes of the British public who really value this heritage. We saw how much people cared about the Sycamore Gap tree, about the Crooked House pub, and you might say, well, in the great context of these things, it's worth the damage. But actually, there are many, many ways to protest in this country. People would encourage it, and you've just alienated any sympathy for whatever cause you have. And I just don't see why you have to be attacking what is essentially another charity to make your issue heard.
Gill?
Yeah, we're not attacking a charity. And I think it's a pity you came on with that aggressive way, because we could have a sensible conversation, and that's what's really important. You say there was damage done to the nature on Stonehenge. Yeah, there's lichen on it. Lichen is extremely susceptible to the effects of climate change. The reindeer are struggling to find lichen on which they depend in Scandinavia because of climate change. So let's get that bit straight. Yes, I do. I've been an English teacher for over 20 years. I have immense respect for our cultural heritage. And I've thought long. We think, all of us who do everything for Just Stop Oil, think long and hard about it, about whether we're comfortable with it. And
okay,
what do you think? There's the road under, the 2023 last year, they approved the tunnel under Stonehenge, and the supporters of Stonehenge described that as devastation on a major scale to the landscape. In the interest of what? Drivers' convenience. Please get a sense of perspective.
Okay, Alice.
This powder has gone, and
Jill. Okay.
A PR perspective on For PR perspective for Just Stop Oil, I think, it's actually irrelevant what your cause is here. If you want to get a cause across, the way to do that and persuade the British public is not to attack these sites, to damage historic sites. It's just, two wrongs don't make a right. And I would like to think that all kind of campaigning groups would be able to find a way of making their voice heard, of persuading the government in a way that is not so damaging and not such a kick in the teeth for so many people in this country.
You're taking a bit of a position there, assuming that you speak on behalf of everybody's response to what we do. You speak on behalf of the populist press and what we do, about what we do.
What about the response to the Sycamore Gap tree, to the Crooked House Park? We saw the general public.
That was nothing to do with us.
No,
that was nothing to do with us, and we were horrified by that as well. So don't try to conflate very different things.
It's the same reaction. That is the reaction that people have to the damage at Stonehenge, and
it's a very different thing, because this has an important message, and you call climate change our cause. How silly is that? It's the cause of every living thing on the planet. We face absolute devastation. The scientists, climate scientists, are tearing their hair out in despair. They too are now scared and saying it's a time to panic. Yesterday there was some orange cornstarch on Stonehenge. Today there isn't, and you're angry about that. Please be angry with the fossil fuel execs who, in the interest of greed, are subjecting us all. People are dying now because of the greed. And this is all happening. You're a historian, you get a sense of scale. So it's like, in the past 100, 200 years, the damage we've done is more than
but
done.
Jill, it's not communicating to the British public.
Yeah, last word to you. Last word
that comes
You're not communicating it either, and that's your responsibility. You have a bigger media platform than I do.
Okay, last word to Alice. Go on, Alice.
I just say, if you want to get across to the British public a message of whatever that message is, the way to do that is not to damage heritage or history.
Alice Loxton, Gill Tavner, a spokesperson there for Just Stop Oil. Alice is a historian as well. Loads of you getting in touch, as you might imagine. The question is, do the ends justify the means? If you agree with the cause, do you agree with this method of making that protest? Gill says it absolutely is necessary. Alice says you actually alienate the people you want to support you.
And so many of you getting in touch and saying, oh, why are you giving them airtime? But then others of you saying, well, actually, I wanted to hear what they had to say and make up my own mind. And this is always the kind of reaction that we get. But hopefully you did find it, ultimately, you found it illuminating and useful.